Hi again, this is Professor Innes, and this is your 13th module of the course, and it's the one we're going to have just before the Thanksgiving break. And keep in mind there'll be no work over the Thanksgiving break. So this is our last one before we take a short rest. But with that in mind, this is the 1 week which you're going to deal with the philosophy of religion. And with this philosophy of religion, we've got to keep in mind that this is philosophy, so it's not theology. It's not the case we have a presumption that God exists. With the philosopher, we've got to prove that God exists. We've got to say here that we have a definite proof, some form of definitive reason or empirical evidence that God does in fact exist. The belief that he exists, or the hope that he exists, or that it would be nice that he would exist, is not good enough to say here God exists. So we have to have that proof that God exists. That's the fundamental problem. Afterwards, even if we say that God does exist, then we have the characteristics of God as being all-powerful and all-good. And for example, we have problems of God's existence by pointing out, say, for example, that evil things happen. We've heard that argument before, if God does exist, why did he allow evil things to happen? Now, reason will be brought along here to say here why God allows these things to go wrong. Because, you'd think if he was a good God, obviously he'd stop these bad things from happening, would he not? But that's too much of a presumption once again, and we have to think to ourselves, is there a reasonable argument to say here, God would allow terrible things to happen to bring about good? There may be a consideration. So, in the news today with the Paris situation, the terrorist attacks in Paris, the good out of that is it brings people together, it makes them sympathetic to each other's cause. So in that sense, some good has come out of it, so therefore maybe God allows these things to happen because a greater good occurs. Now, of course, you're going to read through the arguments for all of this and think, okay, is this a satisfactory argument? Is it really, I prefer that, we didn't get along with each other and we didn't kill each other, rather than, get along and then still people trying to kill us. Just thinking to yourself here, why is it there's such a decent argument? I've got a suspicion it's not a very good argument. So you think to yourself here, right, do I accept this argument that the evil brings about a greater good? So that's the type of thinking you're going to go through for this particular module, just as with the argument that we have an innate conception of God. Now, that's another argument, another reason, novel position put forward by a philosopher to try and bring forward explanations that God does in fact exist. But again, this innatism, we've discussed innatism before somewhat, and we have to prove that it is innate, not just something we were brought up with. And just because everybody else has a knowledge of God doesn't mean to say God exists. It just means that, culturally speaking, we all have this desire to explain why we're here and how this earth got here as well. So it's just the case that is not a necessary proof. And by reason, we think to ourselves, do we accept this position of God's existence simply because everybody thinks about God? So there's just a few points to think about, a few points you will think about when going through the reading, and those arguments, those points of reason are put forward to argue or give us reason to say that God exists. But again, you're the philosopher here. You'll be looking at these arguments and trying to work out if they're reasonable or not. Again, you're not a theologian. If you're a theologian, then these arguments would be criticized by all means, but still God exists, and you'd say, okay, this is a pretty good argument. I like it. Right, I'm being a bit flippant there, but nonetheless, you're certainly less critical as a theologian than you would be as a philosopher. So as a philosopher, don't presume God's existence unless there is proof or good reason to substantiate the claim that God exists. That's your mission with this particular one here, this module. So I think that's all we need to touch upon here. Trying to think here, anything else we need to deal with for this particular module? No, I don't think so. Right, so your journal entry will be to write 3 things which you would consider to be problematic for the existence of God. Okay, so point out 3 aspects from your reading where it would point out that God does not exist. Okay, so I think that's pretty straightforward. Yeah, so just 3 things, 3 arguments, 3 points of reason that says that God does not exist. Again, put a full explanation, spend some time on this, 50 words at least per example. Say here why you understand it and why I should read it through and think, okay, this is a good explanation. Okay, so three aspects, 3 arguments, 3 points that says that God does not exist. Okay, good. Right, so I'll speak to you soon, and have a nice break when you get to it at the end of this module. Okay, speak to you soon. Bye.